Everybody, welcome back to the Miami Minute on Wicked Good Sports, where we cover my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins lost their Thursday night football matchup 27-15 against the Cincinnati Bengals. But let's be real, that is not the main story coming out of this game. Tua Tagovailoa suffered a very serious concussion in the first half of this game. He was knocked unconscious. His arms seized up, his hands seized up, what I believe is called a fencing position, which is normally indicative of brain trauma. You see this pretty often in the UFC or really any kind of combat sport when someone gets knocked out. You also see this in other football instances. Last season, I believe the tight end for the Chargers was knocked unconscious and had a similar position. It's not something you want to see as a Dolphins fan, as a fan of Tua, as a player and a person. It's certainly not something that you want to see happen to someone who seems like such a stand-up dude who's fought through adversity, fought through injuries, and has come back. And the big question is, was Tua concussed this past Sunday in the game against Buffalo? He was pushed down after the play. He hit his head on the turf in that game. He stumbled when he got back up. He left the game and returned, saying that it was a back injury, and he was cleared by an independent doctor, someone that the league has specifically put there for that game to diagnose whether or not a player has concussion. He played really well in that game. After that, he threw a touchdown. He led the Dolphins to a victory against their division rival. 4 days later, on Thursday, he once again was thrown to the turf. He hit his head. He suffered this concussion. I think probably anybody would have been concussed in the way that he was kind of whipped onto the ground. I don't think it necessarily would have not happened had he potentially not been concussed on Thursday, but there is optically a question. Was Tua fit to be cleared to play? And if you shouldn't have been playing, whose fault is it? A lot of people online want to blame the Dolphins, want to see Mike McDaniel fired for allowing Tua to go back in. I think that's a tough, obviously I'm biased in some ways as a Dolphins fan, but I think it's difficult to say that he shouldn't have been playing if the independent doctor from the league cleared him. So it kind of goes beyond, should he have been cleared, or is it their fault? To what is the process to get back into the game? What is the process after someone suffers what looks to be a brain injury on the field, and can that process be improved? I expect, with this being such a big, it's prime time, it was a matchup a lot of people were excited. The Dolphins were undefeated heading into it. The Bengals were defending AFC champs. Joe Burrow and Tua had a really epic face-off in college when they were at LSU and Alabama, respectively. So people were very hyped to see this matchup, and Tua was playing okay. He had a bad interception, but it definitely looked more like he was trying to put the ball up there for Tyreek Hill to make a play on it, and he just didn't get enough behind it, rather than just like a bad decision-making, something that you would say came from potential brain injury. But that doesn't really matter. And after watching like Tua get knocked out, the game felt less important. Sure, I was sad the Dolphins lost. I was sad that they didn't score a touchdown early when Chase Edmonds dropped the ball. I was sad when they didn't score after Teddy threw a bomb to Tyreek Hill and got them down near the goal line. They got field goals on both of those, and if they had scored touchdowns instead, that last drive of the game isn't going for a touchdown. They can play more conservatively and try to kick a winning field goal it ended with Teddy Bridgewater throwing an interception. But it didn't matter. I honestly just wanted to hear that Tua was okay. And fortunately, he was discharged from the Cincinnati hospital and he was able to travel with the team back home. He's back home now, getting an MRI done in the coming days to figure out the extent of this injury that more or less looked completely horrific. And I think it kind of, there's a lot of outrage online, and I think that the outrage stems from a kind of, I don't know, a thing that all football fans live with and kind of try not to think about while watching the game, but is always in at least the back of my mind, if not everyone's mind. Football is a very violent sport. These men are putting their careers, their livelihoods, and more importantly, their future on the line every single Sunday that they step out onto the field for our entertainment. It's modern day gladiators, especially now when we know the long-term effects of CTE. Demaryius Thomas just passed away in his 30s, a few years older than I am now, from the brain injuries he suffered playing for the Broncos in the NFL at receiver. We all kind of know in the back of our mind that this sport that we love, and I love it too. It is my favorite sport. It's the thing that I get most excited to watch throughout the year. Anyone who knows me knows that. I started this channel talking about football. It's a game that we know is kind of, I don't know if gross is the right word, but there's a certain bit of, bad feeling that you need to push down while watching it. And when a player like Tua gets hurt so devastatingly, it kind of forces everybody to want to push the guilt that they feel inside for enjoying football so much down and kind of like point the finger and blame other people. And sure, there is blame to go around. I'm sure. I mean, we'll see how the investigation goes, but I think everybody wants to kind of be like, oh, I'm not a bad person for enjoying the sport, which I like to think I'm not, but perhaps in 100 years, when people look back, they'll look back in the same way that we look back at gladiatorial games and be like, wow, people were very crazy to like this sport because that was not good for human life in general. And I think that no one wants to feel like what they're consuming is bad for you. Everyone who plays knows the risks, especially now, but when it's laid out bare in front of you and a player is getting carted off the field, you don't want to see that. You feel bad for him. You feel guilty about it, and you want to not feel guilty, so you'll lash out at other people. And I do think sooner than later, maybe in the next 10 years, there will be a real reckoning through the public about the sport, and serious questions will have to be asked. Is this game, the way it's currently played, too dangerous for the long-term health of players? And should we adjust it to make it less dangerous? And there'll be a lot of pushback because, the NFL is kind of rooted in a system, a history, a tradition of being tough, of being Iron Man, of overcoming injuries. Ronnie Lott cut his finger off so he didn't have to miss a game. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm still going to cover the NFL. I still love it. I still love the Dolphins. But I'm open for change if change is needed. to make this sport that I really do love safer for the people playing it. And I don't know if that, is out there. I mean, look, Tua, before this game, was potentially going to miss it because of back and ankle problems. And there were people like Colin Cowherd who lambasted him, who pointed out that he's fragile. He can't play in this league the same way other players like Josh Allen do, because he's not physically meant for it. And that's a negative. And it is a negative in the context of how the NFL works today. But will we change the game at some point? I'm not sure. So that's all I really have. It feels bad to kind of go through it in the same way that I usually would do it, so I'm not going to do that. Congratulations to the Bengals, the right of their season. The Dolphins 3-1. That's still fine. 2 division wins. They're set up well, but right now it just feels more important that Tua is okay and the actual ramifications of the game don't seem as important. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you'll watch this and you'll disagree. That's just how I feel and how I'm approaching this episode. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. We have sports videos almost every single day here on the channel. I won't go through the whole rigmarole just because it doesn't feel right for this episode. So again, thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate it, and we will see you in the next one.